Welcome to the BX Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Fowler, and we have another exceptional guest to share their insights and area of expertise with you on the show. Now, just before we jump into the episode, make sure you tap that follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast app to get more BX Podcast episodes right there in your pocket. Now, if you would like to find out more about BX and attend a meeting either in person or online, head over to bxnetworking.com/locations. That's bxnetworking.com/locations. Toni Everard is an award-winning master trainer, coach, mentor, and podcaster who is obsessed with the power of the mind and communication, and the positive impact it has on business success. She works with entrepreneurs, business owners, coaches, therapists, and practitioners, empowering them to stand out as the go-to authority in their field, intrinsically know their worth, and have the confidence to share their unique message with the world. Possessing international certification, Toni is a master trainer of NLP, timeline therapy, hypnosis, and NLP coaching with a level and depth of training coupled with experience that is largely unparalleled in Australia. She has a knack for making learning and growth simple and fun, and has helped hundreds of people across the globe through certification training, group and individual coaching programs, from business owners of 20 plus million brands to solopreneurs and startups. Now, when she's not focused on helping people launch into their genius zone, you can find her traveling from one beach location to the next with her partner, cracking mum jokes with her adult daughter, and hanging out at the local yoga studio. Toni, welcome to the BX Podcast.
Thanks, Ryan. It's great to be here.
This is going to be a very interesting conversation. I want to address some misconceptions and really help people understand the power of what you do and the support it can have to business owners' well-being, mentality, mindset, and all those amazing things in their business. But before we jump into that, let's get a bit of an insight into your journey. Where did you start? What was the jumping off point for you to really step into business for yourself and follow down this path?
Oh, yeah. So if I take you back to 2015, I was working in an accounts role for a function centre in Adelaide. And I have to say, it was a pretty cruisy setup. And it was a hospitality centre. So I worked in the finance team there. And we used to get a lot of events and lunches, and there was a lot of free wine and all that kind of stuff. So it was a pretty crazy setup. But there was a point in time where, after working there for about 6 years, I sort of woke up and, had that moment of, is this my life? I was a single mum, and so I was working part-time in this accounts role. I was partying too much on the weekends. So I had shared custody of my daughter. So when she was at her dad's, I had a big group of friends that we went out for, and, I was working in hospitality. So there's always something exciting going on. But I just got to that point where it's like, this just can't be all there is. And so at that time I thought, well, it must be I need to change careers. We always look for what is it outside of me that I can change. And so I started looking at different things that I could study, and I didn't want to go further in accounting and looking around. And before I knew it, I was in this funnel of the whole, affiliate marketing, how you can make money from your laptop, travel the world, make heaps of money, being fit and tanned, and have an amazing partner and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, that sounds like the thing for me. And
that sounds like a perfect life.
Yeah, right. I loved all that marketing. I was writing that. And so pretty soon I spent literally thousands of dollars that I didn't really have as a single mum, learning all about this affiliate marketing. And I quickly found that I didn't get any results there. I made like $0, literally $0. And that was a bit kind of hard to face up to, because I'm like, oh my God, like I've spent all this money, I've done all these things, but like it's still not working. But there are a couple of things that happened that were really important for me at that time. And the first one was I become aware of personal development because, luckily enough in this company I got involved with, they did recognize that people who got results did the work on themselves. So they did talk a lot about personal development. And I also met my first coach there, and started working with a coach and learned things about NLP and how to change how I thought and to set goals and to, really take action on things. And my life really started to change. So after going to a lot of personal development seminars and jumping up and down to loud music and hugging people and all that kind of jazz.
Yep. Everyone that's done that is smiling and laughing and nodding along right now.
Oh, yeah. A lot of fun. But, what I found through those things is that, I'd go home to my normal environment. Within a couple of weeks, things just started to go back to normal. And so I thought, what, I really want to learn these sort of skills for myself. So I found out that NLP was the key to all of this. I'd been to the Tony Robbins, Unleash the Power Within,
yep.
and decided I would learn this for myself. And so I went to gone on Google, searching for NLP trainings, and actually found one that was located at this really little sleepy regional seaside town that I used to holiday at as a child with my family. And I thought, this is so bizarre that someone's running a training at this place, because there was nothing there. And I thought, it must be a sign.
Yeah.
It must be a sign. So I went to that training, and that's where things just really started to change for me. And I thought, this is what I want to do, because I'd got so much change out of that training for myself. I thought, I really want to help other people. And so that was kind of the start of it. And it went on from there.
Wow. And when you first started to learn the NLP process, understand it, and really kind of start to embrace it and embody it, what was that change and that shift like for you on a personal level in taking these bigger actions to step into business?
Yeah, so there was a lot of things that happened, and the first one was I had a lot of baggage from my childhood. I'm a Gen Xer, and kids through the 80s were really left to their own devices a lot. We were the first of the sort of generations that there was a lot of divorce that was happening and those kinds of things, and that was my experience. And so, from all the stuff that, I'd gathered as a child, there was a lot of stuff I had to work on. And I think that was the biggest shift for me. First of all, was shifting a lot of fear, because I actually had a lot of fear. I had a lot of social anxiety, which I used to manage with alcohol, a lot of fear of rejection and abandonment and all those kinds of things. And those things make it very hard to succeed in business, right? Because we know when we move into business, if you've got a fear of rejection, it's very hard to make sales.
Sales is very tricky.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I really started doing that work on myself. And the other thing was becoming aware of just how much control that I had over my own thoughts, behaviors, emotions, even motivation that I didn't realize I had. I was so aware previously of the things that I didn't want, that I didn't like, that seemed unfair, all the limitations, but I didn't understand that I could change that. And so that was the biggest thing, is really getting that power back. That was huge.
That change and shifting from what you said earlier of, you've gone, okay, I've woken up, I'm not happy. What outside of me do I need to change, to shifting that and flipping it on its head and going, what must I change to change my outside world? When that realization really kicked in, how did the relationship between you, your family, you said you were self-medicating with alcohol, how did that entire relationship shift for you?
Really interesting, because definitely because there was a lot of things going on in my life that I had been for a lot of times pointing the finger at, it's because my parents divorced, it's because I got divorced, it's because I'm a single mum, it's because my work won't find a next level role for me, all those kinds of things. But it was getting to that point of going, okay, I seem to be the common denominator in all of these things, right? Like it all comes back, it's revolving around me. That's the common denominator. And so, that was a really powerful shift. And I think for people to get into that space, it can be a smack in the face, right? Like if you're used to, and you've got people around you who support you and you're saying, yeah, you're poor you, like you've had all these things happen to you, like, no wonder it's so hard for you. That's not helpful, right? Like you have to be able to get into that space of going, no, I want to take my power back. And so I did that, but there's layers of that as well, right? There's layers of that, because what happened when I first went to my first training is that I come out of that going, I know the keys to the universe and I've done all this work on myself, and suddenly everyone around me, like I remember the first time I spent time with my parents again, and I was sitting there going, oh my God, I can now hear their language, right? Like I can hear how they talk about things. And it was just like, oh, I don't know how I can be around this, right? But really, that's just, that level of judgment just means you've got more work to do, right? It's just bringing into your awareness more stuff that you're unconscious of. So in that way, like I did definitely change a lot of my friendship groups. I didn't fall out with anyone, but I quickly realized, who were the people that I wasn't my best self around, and who were the people that really encouraged me to be more, do more, grow, and all those kinds of things. So there was a lot of shifts that way. And definitely my relationship with alcohol changed very, very quickly, because I realized that, and alcohol is probably the most easiest one to recognize, but there are other behaviors as well. Like I would comfort eat, right? So comfort, I used to smoke. I smoked on and off cigarettes throughout my whole adult life. All of these things were behaviors that were state-changing behaviors. And so once I understood that I could control my own state and change my emotional state, then I didn't rely on these other numbing out sort of behaviors. And like I said, it was a process that happened. There was like a big, steep growth in that first 12 months, but then it's just kind of continued. And to this day, there's still stuff that I'm working on, because, as you grow and you set bigger goals and everything else, you find more stuff. It's like a treasure map.
Yeah. There's a saying from James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. I'm not sure if you've read the book, but it's you don't rise to your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And for many, that is self-medication and the different vices that people have. Like I know that in the past, when there's things happened, I've been a stress eater and a few other things. So I understand where you're coming from. And I'm hoping that the people listening can really relate to that journey, hopefully in a positive way.
Yeah.
Or at least awaken enough to go, hang on, there might be something to adjust here. And this is where a lot of the tools that you've learnt and you've been supported with coaches and now you support other people with in hypnosis and NLP come into play. Can you elaborate a bit more on what NLP and hypnosis actually do to support positive changes and making these shifts towards the goals that people actually want to achieve? Yeah,
absolutely. And you're right on the money with that last comment, Ryan. And I think it's important to know that whatever behaviors people have, they're not bad, they're not wrong. It's literally the best strategy a person has at that point in time. Every behavior has a positive intent for that person. And when you have more resources, you can use the best resource that's now available to you, right? You can change those things. And so NLP and hypnosis, why they're so powerful is because all learning, change and behavior happens at the unconscious level. Okay, so we have our conscious mind, which is our logic mind, it's our reasoning mind, it's our waking mind, it's what we, where we say what it is we're going to do. It's the goal setter. And then we've got the unconscious mind, which is symbolic. It's emotional. It's where our values and our beliefs are. It's where our motivation lies. It's where all of those unconscious behaviors, if you think about unconscious behaviors, great example is driving, right? When you first start to drive and you're just like, oh my God, there's so many things, and I got seatbelt and ignition.
Just white knuckling on the steering wheel.
And like adjusting all the mirrors and the thing. And, there's so many things to do before you even take off from the curb, right? And then with practice and over time, eventually you're just like driving down the road without even thinking about it. So where does all that behavior go? Well, it goes into the unconscious mind. So there's a lot of things that we do unconsciously. So if we want to create real change, we have to be able to communicate with the unconscious mind. Okay, so the unconscious mind is the goal getter, right? It's responsible for a lot of those behaviors. And it's also responsible for repressing a lot of our old negative emotional baggage and, limiting beliefs and those sort of things. So essentially with NLP and timeline therapy and hypnosis, you can communicate with the unconscious mind in a way to reframe a lot of what's been stored in the past and even change beliefs. We can change values, because values are just the things that are important to you. But things that are important to people are things that they're either trying to achieve or avoid. And if there's a lot of stuff people are trying to avoid, there's a lot of conflict. It's a lot of, backwards and forwards. There's a lot of boom bust type behavior, right? Where people, like financially, they might achieve a financial goal, but as soon as they get there, they drop back into not having any money again. Or, even in health, people lose a lot of weight and then suddenly put it all back on. And this is all of this sort of incongruent values and beliefs and things going on at the unconscious level. So with NLP and like these other modalities, as I said, we can access the unconscious mind, and it's a process. I don't do it to anyone. It's a do with process. So I essentially facilitate people how to work with their own mind effectively to become congruent and aligned, so that the things that they say they're going to do, they actually do, and they get those results. And of course, a big part of that is language. So much of the problems that we create for ourselves are formed linguistically. So like the words we use really do matter.
Yeah. And I want to continue down this path in just a moment. You've mentioned to shift people's beliefs and their pre-assumptions or assumptions on things. And I would just like to make a really strong distinction here, because there will be some people listening right now going, yep, this sounds great. Yeah, I've heard great things about NLP and hypnosis and timeline therapy. But there is a misconception or a stigma around NLP, and it comes from a previous time of, strong corporate pushes and corporate sales and all this kind of stuff. I'd like for you to be able to shift people's belief in removing that stigma and actually giving people a genuine understanding of what NLP is and the support network or mental support that it gives people.
Yeah, it's such a great point. And I'm glad you brought that up, Ryan, because for some people, it's interesting because the school that I've come into of NLP and the community that I'm connected with globally, all I've heard about are people, and I know of, are people doing amazing things, helping people across the world and making a really positive difference. And like you said, in the past, there have been people that have perhaps learnt skills and not really understood them as well, or used them in ways which we describe as unecological. So the school of thought that I come from in NLP is that it was a presupposition essentially, like the rules of engagement is that anything that you do in NLP has to work within the 4 levels of ecology. And that is this good for the person, right? Is the first. So is it good for the person? The second level is it good for their business or their family? And then the third level is it good for society? And then fourth, is it good for the planet? Okay, so that's the filter that I work with the school of thought and the community that I'm connected with work in. Okay, so I guess that's where you look at, it's like, any form of power, I guess you could say, is it the power that causes the problem, or is it the intent behind the person who's using it that causes the problem? Right? And that's really the same as NLP. People say, can it be used for manipulation? 100%. But even if you talk about manipulation, what does manipulation mean? Because definitely if I have a client who comes to me and they say, I've got this problem and this is the solution I want, I'm going to be essentially manipulating the way that they think in a positive way so that they can create the outcome that they want, right? If you go to a chiropractor, they manipulate your spine in a way to make it aligned and congruent, right? So it's understanding that, yes, these are really powerful tools for helping people change in really positive ways. Can they be used negatively? Yes, they can. And so this is exactly why I think it's so important that people understand themselves, that they understand language, that they can understand if someone is trying to influence them in a way that's not helpful for them. Because all of the leaders, the things that you see on TV, in the news, it's all created by people who understand language really well. And it's created a way to influence people to think a certain way. And so from my thinking, knowing NLP is essential if you want to be able to understand yourself and understand communication in a way that helps you make choices that are the best for you.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I know that it is a sticking point for some people who go, oh, yeah, I've heard about that. It's not my thing. I've seen it used in the wrong way, but that gives a great perspective, and it really highlights the importance of positive intention, and not just in what you do with NLP, but in terms of for people in general.
Yeah.
The power of having the right intention can shape the way that you actually use the ability, the power, the skills, and everything that you've got. Now, to continue on our conversation, I would like to explore languaging further, and this idea of self-talk and how that drives personal belief. And then there's obviously a lot of layers here, and we're not going to have time to dive into all of that today for simple reasons of it could be a very, very long episode. But let's just start on a surface level of languaging, what you say externally, but also what you say internally. Can you elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, communication, there's so much more to communication than just the words that we say. Even, communication is the tonalities, our physiology, it's the pictures, it's the sounds, it's the feelings. All of this encompasses communication. But if we think about language specifically, when we think about, I was talking about the conscious mind and unconscious mind, we're going to think about the conscious mind as being the guiding parental figure to the unconscious mind. So that means that the words that we say to ourselves, you want to be talking to yourself as if you're guiding like a, 6-7-year-old child, right? So that means giving yourself positive self-talk, right? Talking about what it is that you want, giving direction, giving guidance that is positive and helpful. And consciously or unconsciously, a lot of people have some very negative self-talk, even in really minor ways. Like, someone could be working on a task and something happens and they go, oh, so stupid, something like that. Yeah. And it's just these little sort of negative words that if you were saying that to a child, it would be seen as, just about child abuse, right? But these are the things that people often say to themselves. So it's really important to get awareness of that language and flip it, right? And it's the same as, even the words that we say externally to other people. And this comes from the perspective of perception is projection, where your unconscious mind takes everything personally. So what you say about other people will have an effect on you. But if we look at the words that we say, a great example of this is I was running a training sometime last year, I was running a training, and on the second day of the training, I noticed one of the students come in and, she was looking down and I wasn't in a great sort of state. And so, I said, hey, how's it going? And she was like, terrible. Haven't had a great morning. The traffic was horrific, right? And I'm like, okay, interesting. I live in Adelaide. I'm training in Adelaide. And in Adelaide, we've got a very big long road called South Road. And if anyone's ever been on South Road.
Very original name.
Yeah. Goes all the way down south. It's amazing. But it's known for being bumper to bumper peak hour traffic, right? Which Adelaide traffic, you can still get across one side of Adelaide to the next in half an hour, right? So it's not a big deal, but she described it as horrific. And so if you think about that word horrific, right, what conjures up for you? If you think, Ryan, if I just say the word horrific, what kind of images come to mind for you?
Like plague, wars, just very, very large scale disasters and mass injury.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so this was interesting. So I thought, well, it's South Road. So what actually happened? I'm like, were there any accidents or anything? And she said, no, it was just bumper to bumper. Right? And it's, obviously we were in a training, so she was open to me questioning this language a little bit. And I said, okay, so can we look at the structure of this, what you're saying? So when you say horrific, and she said, oh, yeah, and the guy behind me, his eyes were like this big and he was right up my backside and, she's very stressed about the whole situation. But when we broke it down, there wasn't actually a horrific scene in the traffic. It was peak hour, it was busy. There was someone was behind her and probably a bit close. That the language that she had used had caused a very, very stressful situation for her inside her own reality, because we only experience reality within, right? We're not experiencing it outside, we're experiencing it within. And so talking to her about this and getting her to shift her language shifted her whole perspective on this. And she was like, okay, yeah, it probably wasn't that bad. And the next day she come into training. She was beaming. She was like, I had a great drive in this morning. But nothing had really changed, right? It was still a weekday. It was still peak hour. But how she was filtering that and how she was labeling it, because language is essentially, it's language, we're gauging our experience, it had changed. And so that changed her internal representation of what would happen, her experience. So, language is a very, very powerful part of how we communicate and how we experience the world.
And just to follow that on before we wrap up, the implication of languaging and self-talk for business owners and how that plays out in their business from an external communication standpoint to internally within teams and cultures and wanting to build a business to whatever scale they choose. How does that often play out and what results are they seeing before and after shifting languaging?
Yeah, it is so powerful. Like a couple of the businesses I work with, one is a therapy business, my therapy house I work with, and they work with neurodivergent children, and they have a lot of speech pathologists and occupational therapists and those kinds of people. And so for them, learning NLP and the language and thinking about, what certain words create internally for people when you speak them or when you hear them has been a huge game changer for them. So from the perspective of knowing how to communicate with the parents of their children, they've seen huge shifts in the results that they get with their clients because the parents are able to be more effectively involved in the children's development, and that's been huge. Another business that I work with, he's at a 20 million plus brand, and it's in a different kind of space altogether. It's irrigation and landscape supplies and things like that. Through changing the way that he communicates to his team, and he's had his team come and do training with me as well, and coaching and just unpacking how he thinks and speaks into what he's planning out over the next, 30 days, 6 months, 12 months, has changed radically how things go. Like he was going into like a business sale, and he's like, everything is just falling into place because he's changed how he thinks about it and how he talks about it. From going from, I think this is going to be, it's hard, it's tricky doing these kinds of transactions, to going, no, this is how it's going to go. And really languaging, this is how it's going to go. It's just all sort of falling in place. So that focusing on what you want, speaking what it is that you want, and using language that creates an internal representation for others, like a picture for others of what you actually want to see, it just makes a huge difference in business.
That's profoundly impactful. And I know that we've only just really scratched the surface. I feel like you and I could probably have this conversation for a very long time. But we do have to wrap it up here. And I would, just before I ask you to share a bit more about your business, I would like to encourage people, if they have resonated with something in here, to get in touch and actually start a conversation, because even from kind of the short time that we've had today, you can already see how much of an impact it can already have. So Toni, can you share a little bit more about your business, how people can get in touch with you and the work that you do?
Yeah, so my business is Toni Everard Coaching. So you can find me pretty easily across all the social platforms. My website, it's all my name, Toni Everard. I've got a podcast as well called The Coaching Circle, which goes a lot more into language and coaching and communication. And there's also a group membership off the back of that as well, where I do live sessions every week for people and Q&A. And of course, there's coaching and certification training programs. And I do tailored programs as well for small to medium businesses. So there's lots of ways that people can get in touch with me. And anytime, I encourage people to reach out. I'm always the person who answers, and will be happy to answer any questions. I'll see if I can help.
Thank you so much. We'll put a link to your website in the show notes down below as well, so people can track you down easily. But Toni, thank you so much for being on the BX podcast. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I have no idea where the last 30 odd minutes have gone, but it's been a very enjoyable conversation, and I appreciate you sharing your insights and experience on the BX podcast.
Thanks, Ryan. I really enjoyed it.
That wraps it up for today's episode of the BX podcast. You can get more of the show by simply tapping the follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. To join us at a live and in-person or online event, head over to bxnetworking.com/locations. That's bxnetworking.com/locations to find a meeting near you. We look forward to talking to you next time on the BX podcast.